So this is the February 2026 update about AI and innovation in market research. I'm going to report on a study we conducted in December of last year looking at the insights industry, but this was the sixth wave of the study. Then I'm going to give you my predictions for what are going to happen in our industry and beyond our industry this year in 2026. And then my recommendations for 2026, things I think you could and should be doing. And then we're going to have Q&A. So this is the sixth wave. The data was collected in December. We've had two waves each year in 23, 24, and 25. Just a quick note on where the data comes from, mostly from Europe, USA, and a reasonable number from the Asia Pacific region. Overwhelmingly from research agencies or from individual researchers, consultants and suppliers like that. We've got 38 research buyers in the sample. We've got 27 who are providers to the industry, such as the software companies, the panel companies, and then 9 who include journalists, who include academics and people like that. So the first question we asked people is, how optimistic are you at the moment about our industry? And it's quite busy, so we'll unpack this a piece at a time. But the dark color, the bluey sort of color, is December 2025. And the numbers that go with it are in red. So you can see the picture there. And if you look at the top of the chart for very optimistic, then for the last 4 waves, the last 3 waves really, from the high point 4 waves ago, it's been dropping. If we have a look at optimistic, then it's come down from 54 to 46. We see that neutrals are increasing and pessimists are increasing. So let's make that a little bit easier to see. What we can see there is that for 2 years, 4 waves, the numbers kept being in the 50 to 55% range. Now, both of the waves in 2025 are less optimistic. We are still optimistic. We have more optimists than pessimists, but less so. And I've left on the screen a comment that I put in last time, which covered what happened when we had that change in 2025. And I said at that time, I wasn't confident that it wasn't just a statistical wobble, given the non-probabilistic nature of this sample. So let's see what's going to happen in the December. Well, now we can see what's happening in the December, and we can see there is quite a change going on. So we asked people what were the most positive aspects of our industry in terms of market research and insights. And the most common comment about positive is that AI is boosting productivity and it's boosting efficiency. Other frequent comments were that we've got continued demand and relevance of research. We've got innovation, new tools and new methods going on, not just AI. People are understanding the importance of human expertise and judgment, and that there is a growing focus on data quality with things like the Global Data Quality Initiative. We also asked people what were the most negative things, and the number one is AI. It's over-reliance, hype, and misuse. So the number one positive is AI. The number one negative is AI. Then we have data quality erosion, fraud, and synthetic data risks. So while some people were talking about the positives, there were lots of others who were talking about the negatives about data quality. Shrinking budgets, fewer briefs, and commoditization of the industry, job losses, and a threat to the talent pipeline. We're going to come back to this. There is a growing awareness that we're hiring fewer new starters in the research industry. What is that going to mean for us a few years down the road when we'll start to hollow out and we don't have people to become the new managers, to become the new trainers? And a devaluation of research expertise and the DIY threat. So we can see there's a really strong mirror between the positives and the negatives. So let's dig into that by role. The research suppliers are the most conflicted group. It's the biggest group by quite a way. Over half of them are optimistic, but they have also got the highest pessimistic rate. They see AI's potential, but there's lots of fears about clients bypassing them with DIY tools, comments about budget shrinking, comments about synthetic data undermining real research. But it's mostly about whether the industry is going into a bad place. Are we commoditizing ourselves out of existence? Picking through the open ends, there's quite a strong thread that people think humans will win. But coming back to this talent pipeline, there's a real concern that even if we win that argument, who is going to train the next generation of juniors if we're not hiring people now? The buyers of research, remember it's a smaller group, but they are pragmatically positive about AI because it makes their work faster and more influential. A lot of them, however, are net neutral because they like the power it gives to them, but they don't like the insights team being cut out by non-researchers doing bad DIY research with AI tools. And there are lots of concerns about keeping pace. I have noticed, I do a lot of training in the area of AI, and client-side researchers are massively present because they're trying to keep up with these changes. They would like research to be more central, and maybe AI is a method of achieving that, but it depends on whether their employers invest in people or replace them with machines. And then we get the panel companies and the software companies, and they are more optimistic than the other two groups, but they see how bad the data is. These people are hands-on, they're working really hard, whether they're at the panel companies or whether they're at software companies, to try to find the bad data, to improve it. So they see it on a much more day-to-day basis. And lots of conversations about fraud rates, bot contamination, and overselling of synthetic data. But there's also a sense that we've seen it all before. We've had transitions. We went from door to telephone. We went from telephone to internet. We just need to work out how to do this change too. If we look at it by region, then the USA is quite interesting. It is the most split in terms of its views. It's focused on data quality. A lot of the work around data quality has come out of the USA and out of the Insights Association, for example. They're the most alarmed by the frauds, the bots, the synthetic data. There's a lot of stuff about jobs, consultants struggling to find work, things like that. And when we look at how split they are, there are a lot of passionately pro-AI people and a lot of passionately anti-AI people. And when we get to synthetic data, it's really hot, that disagreement between whether it's a good or a bad thing. If we move to Europe, then a lot of the worries are about the loss of methodology, the loss of rigor. What does GDPR mean? The mismatch between expectations and budgets, lots of structural things. The positives often relate to the collaboration and the way the industry is thinking about approaching AI. Lots of calls for things like guardrails, ethical adoptions. But this is the region which has got the biggest worries about recessions, the economy, geopolitics, and war. And the rest of the world is a really bad label because it includes Asia Pacific, Latin America, Africa. It's because there's a smaller base there. Very pragmatically positive about AI as a day-to-day enabler. Less worry about whether our industry is going to continue to exist or not. A lot more of getting on with it. Quite often, the advantage of AI is that small companies can do things they previously could not do. Small countries in countries that are economically less developed being able to do things they could not do before. But democratization gone wrong, untrained people doing bad research, is a major concern. It's a bigger concern in the rest of the world than in USA and Europe, but it's also big there. The shrinking business, slowness of business is worse there than in the other regions. And there's a lot more talk about, in my country, I can now do this, which identifies the feeling of being outside the USA, Europe loop. And we'll look into that a bit more in the Q&A at the end. So I'm going to look at some predictions for 2026. I'm going to start with looking outside the research world because we need to know what the big picture is. And then I will focus in on our ecosystem. So the first one is almost a no-brainer, but you do occasionally see people say we are plateauing. No, the rate of change is enormous. You are going to be amazed at some of the things that are going to be introduced and released this year. There are going to be new innovations, there are going to be more powerful tools, there's going to be more with video, there's going to be more with voice, major changes. Synthetic and predictive approaches are happening everywhere. We talk about them in the research world, but they are a major phenomenon. People are synthesizing proteins, people are synthesizing cells, they're synthesizing buildings, they're using synthetic cities, all sorts of things in order to be able to understand things better. This is a major move. So is predictive analytics. It's not a research thing, this is a global thing. One of the things we're seeing, software as a service, their valuations, their stock prices have been coming under a lot of pressure because the way software is written is changing. Lots and lots of things can't be as expensive in the future as they are now. One of the shifts we expect to see is away from seats, where you buy 55 people using it, to how much is it used. And this is the sort of model you look at when we use AI. We pay for tokens, or we pay $20 a seat if we're in Teams. But there is much more of a tokens paying mentality there. And we're seeing this hitting a lot of the SaaS programs, systems, and that will come into research too. One of the things that's beginning to be noticed is the big four accountancy companies. They've already some signs, but we expect to see a lot of restructuring, a lot of layoffs, a lot of backroom jobs, junior jobs, audit jobs, middle tier being done with AI. The billable hours at really high rates of billable hours is looking to be a model that's disappearing. Now, that has a big lesson for anybody in the research industry who thinks our solution is to become consultants, because actually consultants are having quite a hard time. Software coders are really in the front line. New starters are finding it really hard to get a job. People who were earning $200,000 3 years ago are now earning $60,000 and $70,000 in many cases. This is where AI has been applied the fastest and the deepest, where we've really seen agents coming through. One coder doing the work of 20 coders. What's that going to mean when it reaches research and finance and legal and HR and all these other departments? We're seeing AI become the new operating system. People are not sitting there any longer. When they started with computers a few years ago, back in the late 70s, you had the operating system. It was Windows or it was the Mac operating system. And then over the years, it's shifted. And mostly it's been the internet. The thing that we've had running most of the time was the internet. But now, if you think about it, so much of the time you are in that AI. That is becoming the way you expect to organize things and move things around. And this has led to the dead internet commentary. How many times are people actually going to go to an internet website or something versus how many times are they going to ask AI to go and fetch the information? So the website will have visitors, but they will mostly be bots. They can turn off the light, so to speak, this shift and this change in direction. AI slop. So this is articles written by AI. This is images created by AI. This is videos created by AI. It includes deep fakes and malicious fakes. And it's making it harder to train the AI models, but it's making the cost of verification go up. When we want to check that something's real, it's becoming harder to do that. We can see a very specific decline. I used to get most of my images from iStock Photo. Now I create them with AI. The stock photos, the stock videos are just one example of a niche that is really going to shrink. Very few things disappear to zero, but they can become a lot smaller. And this is a good indicator of one way that disruption happens. And most of the people I listen to, the leaders in the field, are pretty sure of this. most of the big disasters that are going to happen in AI this year and next year will not be hallucinations. We're largely on top of hallucinations. They still happen, but we know to look for them. They're far rarer. But agents are going to make major problems. Not because the agents make an hallucination, but because the agent has been not properly constrained. It does more than its job, or it does its job when the job is not wanted. And we're going to see some major problems those ways. So let's take the predictions back into the research ecosystem. The first thing is we are going to see a continued divergence. There are companies who are rushing into AI, including some blue chip FMCG companies. And there are others who are going at a snail's pace into there. There is a real difference between what is happening. I fear that we are going to continue to see panel data problems. There's a lot of good work being done to fix these problems, but the bots are getting smarter. If we see more and more personas being created to do surveys, then it's going to be very hard to tackle it. I think we're going to see a surge in the use of synthetic data. We've seen a surge in the number of vendors and presentations. We're seeing the major companies as well as minor companies offering it. I'm talking to quite a lot of those blue chip companies who are in the fast moving category for my point one, who are using it for quite a large percentage of their research, like 20%, not 80%, but nevertheless significant. We're going to see a continued growth in conversational research. Lots of people are using this. There are lots of platforms out there. I think we're going to see more and more people do this. It's going to take some work away from online focus groups, from online discussions, but it's also going to bring in projects that would never have been run before, and it's going to change some quantitative quick projects to conversational research projects, which some people call qual at scale. We can have that conversation later. But certainly the ability to talk to people, to be less grid and quant focused, but still talk to a reasonable number of people, that's going to continue to take off. Automated analysis has been much slower. We've seen much more use of AI in qual than we have in quant. This year, I think we're going to see more tools. I was delighted to see the AI assistant in display when I was at the SMR Congress and talking to the founder there. Really clever. That's the direction we need to see going. I think within organizations, we're going to see some interesting developments with Power Automate and Copilot Studio to get Excel working better. But I think we will see a lot more besides that in automated analysis. Also, predictive services. So some of these have been around for a while. Link AI will test your advertising, but it doesn't generate synthetic people. It compares your ad with all ads like that against test databases. So that's AI predictive. Predictive eye tracking doesn't generate synthetic eyes which look at your media. They generate the media, compare it with past media, work out where the eyes would have gone. And I think we're going to see more and more of that predictive services where you simply load your material and you get an AI answer, not a synthetic data answer. We're going to see a lot more entrants coming into this world of ours. We've already seen it, but it's going to grow and grow significantly more. We're going to see business failures and distress sales. We've seen some in 2025. I'm hearing quite a bit on the wire of companies who are really looking to sell. People who invested heavily in tech 5 years ago are struggling because that tech is now the wrong tech. And so that's one of the issues there. People who can't or won't operationalize AI into their systems are going to struggle. So we're seeing some headcount reductions, but we're seeing these hiring reductions. It's really hard for new starters to get into this industry. And one of the things that's come about is because clients now want to be able to interrogate the focus group transcripts with their AI. They want to be able to interrogate the quantitative data with their AI. We're seeing clients increasingly asking for all the raw materials to be sent to them so that they can do that additional checking. This, of course, is going to increase the costs for agencies because you are going to have to double check that you have looked at all of these things, and you are going to be sent queries back from the clients who discover things which you had not noticed in the data. So probably an improvement in quality, but it's going to cause a few hiccups as we go through that. So what does this mean for you and for our industry? And is this a storm that's coming over the lake towards us? My first recommendation to you as an individual and to you as an organization is you want to be the AI leader. Either you're going to do something with AI or AI is going to do something with you. So in your team, try to be the leader. You want your company to be the leader. You want to be the leader in your vertical. We've seen some great examples. Tony Costello, for example, at Heineken, Elaine Rodrigo at Reckitt, who have elevated up from insights into strategic leadership teams because they've written the AI system so well. If you're an agency, you want to be the mentor to your clients. You want to be sharing the key information with them. Pick an AI provider and go all in. People like me who run courses run 4, 5, 6 different AI systems. That is not efficient. Go with Gemini, go with Copilot, go with ChatGPT, go with Claude, and get really good at it. You can have a small team that look at alternatives, and maybe in a year or two you'll change. But you really need to embed these skills. One of the reasons for that is you need 100% of your staff to be using AI. And I've done some research into this, and I've seen some other published research as well. And in most organizations, only 50% of the people who are given AI are using it regularly. So we need to improve the training, we need to improve the empowerment, we need to improve a whole lot of things so that it's actually being used throughout the organization. That also means empowering your team to utilize AI. I sometimes do some training and we find out that, we can't upload files, we can't access SharePoint, we can't access OneDrive, we can't access the Google Drive. Of course, there are risks. Your IT department is going to have to be proactive, but this is not going to work unless you connect things up and then monitor them and create them as safely as possible. If you reduce the ability of these platforms to run properly, then you are not going to get the benefits, and not everybody's going to use them. Or worse still, we have this phenomenon called shadow AI. People coming to work, the AI that work gives them isn't very good, so they open an incognito browser and they log into their own AI and they're using that instead. And of course, that's an enormous security risk. Change fatigue is going to happen in a big way. The more AI can change things, the more temptation there is to keep implementing it. And that's not a great idea. One of the things you need to do is look at the workflow, look at where people want to be more efficient, see where you can remove steps, but don't change it from doing A to doing B. Change a process that maybe was ABC in the past just becomes AC. That is going to help combat the change fatigue. Unlearning is just as important as learning. And one of the phrases that I would ban from almost any company is will always. We will always need humans to answer surveys. We will always need humans to write this. We will always want to test it this way and that way. We will always want to print things out. They may occasionally be true, but they're really blocking type thinking. You need to unlearn this will always and look at what is the real job. So there's an example that I often quote, which is that if Union Pacific had realized it was in the people moving business instead of being in the railway business, we'd all be flying Union Pacific Airline now. So we need to work out what business are we in and unlearn the other bits, just like we had to unlearn posting and punching paper questionnaires, just like we had to unlearn running call centers. We need really short timelines. I've spoken to some people who came along and said they've got a 2-year plan. No, you should be looking at 3-4 days to get a working demo. You want a minimum viable product in a couple of weeks. It wants to be working for people in a month, wants to be delivering value back to you in those sort of timelines. Partnering is better than creating, usually. Part of the reason for that is these timelines. It might take you 3 months to do something. If somebody has already got it, plug it in, use it until something better comes along, and then plug that in. Focus on human to human connections. So you want to be the mentor for your client. That means really meeting with them on a regular basis. Going back to maybe having coffees with them, something we used to do before COVID. It's dropped out of fashion as much. They need to have confidence that we are going to help them get through this AI revolution. We need to make sure that our people are talking to each other in our own organizations, because that is going to be a really key strength as we go forward. And people talk about moats in sort of the business world. What is it that defends your business? AI is going to give you zero competitive advantage, because any AI you can use and develop, somebody else can too. You might get a temporary advantage. No, what is different is your knowledge, what you have learned over the years. All of us, if we're given Claude to work with interactively, will produce different reports, different outputs, because we're leveraging what we know in addition. You want to make sure that all your corporate knowledge is in your system and it's not shared with anybody else's system. So it's something that's going to provide you with an advantage that you can move forward with. So those are my 10 recommendations for this year. So let's go to what one of my friends comically called a few years ago, Q&Ray. So I'm going to have a look at the questions. I can see that we've got some already. One of the questions in the Q&A, reasons for pessimism increased AI taking over. It is clearly one of the reasons for pessimism, but so are geopolitical, so are data quality problems. There's another question in the Q&A, can we get a copy of the presentation? Yes, we will be publish them hopefully tomorrow on the NewMR website. You'll get an email from Zoom in about 5 days saying it's up there on the website, just in case you haven't noticed it. We'll give them a bit of a shout in social media as well. So is AI predictive services focused more on machine learning agents? Good question. So we have this big divergence in the AI that's at use. We have machine learning, which is relatively deterministic, and once you've set it up, it gives you the same answers each time. And we have generative AI, Gemini, ChatGPT, and so on. And when we look at synthetic data, augmented synthetic data, which is the biggest type of synthetic data, it does not use generative AI. It's almost entirely based around statistics and machine learning because of that predictability. So a lot of the existing predictive systems are based much more around machine learning than they are around generative AI. But there are new models coming through. Diffusion is being used in new ways. World models, as they're called, are being used in new ways. So there will be additional changes. Do we have the optimism, pessimism data by age? I don't, and unfortunately, we don't actually ask age on the questionnaire. And it would be interesting to know that difference. It'd be worth doing that on the next wave for sure. Getting a Google AI leader certificate is a good path. I think any formal level of certification is a good idea. And prescription 6 is brilliant. Unlearning is as important as learning. So I can't take any credit for that. Adam Grant, who writes some really good books, has talked about this unlearning quite a bit in the past. Because it's not just an AI phenomenon. We fall into habits. We become good at something, and then we try to think that it's a key part of going forward. And so, yeah, it's really key. Got another question in the Q&A tool. I'm going to see if I can move it a bit closer in front of my screen. I've read more than one article stating that humans will be needed to reduce AI legal risk. In our world, that would mean human checking, auditing, verification of research or data could be referenced in a legal claim, consumer lawsuits, stakeholder lawsuits against a company. So whenever making a mistake could cause you to be sued, if you're using AI, you're going to want to do that checking process. And my general rule of thumb is that, let's say AI makes you 50% faster, you're going to spend 10 percentage points of that on improving your checking. You don't get all of the speed improvements because the checking needs to go in. And people talk a lot about this in terms of human in the loop. You need to really look at your processes and decide where the checking should be. So the big change that we're seeing happening in automation is the use of agents. Agents leads to agent orchestration, where agent A passes the task on to agent B, passes the task on to agent C. So we need to know that what is passed is right. Do we need to look at it at that stage, or can we look at it at stage C? And is there an audit trail that if there's a problem at C, we can look backwards? Some of these checking can be largely automated. So when I used deep research a year or so ago, I would check every one of the links manually. Now I just use another agent to check all of the links and to show me text that it has recovered back from those. And then it will throw up one or two which look a bit dodgy and I need to check them by hand. Not only that, but a few days ago, Google's deep research has been relaunched with extra checking built in. So as we go along, the nature of the checking will change. We will use agents to do some of the checking. We will do humans for some of the checking. But fundamentally, and this is actually prescription number 11, you have to own everything you produce. You can't try to say, oh, the AI made a mistake. No, if your company delivered this, your company made a mistake. If you, as an internal employee, deliver it to your boss with a mistake, then you made that mistake. It wasn't the AI. It's your job to sign off. So one of the comments I used in a workshop yesterday is the AI does the work, you make the judgments, you make the decisions, and you're responsible for, that doesn't look right. So looks like I've got another question in the Q&A. When is the time to change the AI provider? So if something becomes risky, then you might do that. So let's say you had started with Grok, and then Grok started to generate all of those problems we saw last year with its sort of pro-Nazi and crazy sort of statements. You might want to change in a hurry. So that's a special case. Normally, you're becoming aware that your platform isn't moving along at even a similar pace to the others, and then you might want to make that change. So let's say one of the platforms starts falling behind. It's unlikely because they copy each other. The best platform at any moment in time may not be the best one in the near future. A lot of people think that it's probably going to be Google if it's going to be an American platform, but not sure. So I wouldn't switch in a hurry. But I might say, you know what, we are going to start trying a different way of doing things. So maybe we want to start using Notebook LM. We want to use that Notebook LM in conjunction with Gemini. So we will have one team using two platforms. And they will, if they find that they're entirely using the new platform, then we would roll that out. And that's more the way that I would do it. I would get one team to start using two platforms, and if they move to the platform they're testing, then look at rolling it out elsewhere. So we've got a question or a comment in the chat. I think we're going back to the roots. Whoever owns the data will own the power. With AI, almost anyone can analyze data in a sophisticated way and extract deep, intelligent insights, but not everyone has access to high-quality human data. human data is becoming gold again. Agree? Question mark. Largely. So can AI be as good as any human? Not yet. It's as good as most humans already, but not the best 25% at the moment. Will it be? Yeah, possibly. In a year or two. We are moving very, very rapidly. There will still be some differences because and it comes back to the point that you're making there in the chat, things that the AI doesn't. So most of the things that I have learned in my nearly 50 years of research are not in any AI. Some of them are because I've written books and I've written articles, and all of those are in there. But all the things that I have not written are still in my head, and very similar things will be in your head. So that is a clear advantage, and we want to try to capture that as much as we can. It's really important if you are one of the big FMCG companies, you're one of the big airlines, one of the big banks, you are collecting millions of views from real human beings. That is beautiful information. You do not want to share that with the AI companies because that is a distinct advantage. And the information that Nestle has, for example, is different to the information that Unilever has, is different to the information that Reckitt has. So that is a unique strength. You want to be able to build on that, and you want to be able to use that as your really competitive advantage, particularly because the AIs are now struggling to learn new information. Because so much of the internet has already been read, and so much of the new internet is AI slop, it's harder and harder for them to train new models. So this additional information that is held, yes, data is becoming gold again. Absolutely. Another comment in the chat, AI, especially Gen AI, is not as good as other models for computational accuracy with survey data. Just found errors on NPS data counts recently, even on a small data set. At the moment, that is true. There are methods that you can do to make it tighter, checking how it's using Python to do the underlying script and things like that. But this is going to disappear as a problem over the next 2 years. So that is not a defense against AI that's going to help us in 2 years' time. In 2 years' time, the AI is not going to make mistakes on counting NPS data. Where it still might make a mistake is whether NPS was a sensible question to have asked in that study area. What is the best AI to use for quant survey data analysis at the moment? I would it depends how technical you are. If you are really technical and you can use Copilot Studio, that would be interesting. If you wanted to be slightly less technical, but still technical, then I would probably use Claude Code and Claude, or I would use Codex and ChatGPT. And then if you wanted probably the least technical and the most pure power, I would go down Google Gemini. So it really depends how technical you want to be in that process. And that, I think, has taken us all the way through the questions. So thank you so much for staying online. Let's just go back to the next slide. So the recordings should be on the website sometime tomorrow, certainly by Monday. Big thank you to the people who are patrons via our Patreon site. Hopefully some more people will be. Big shout out to our sponsors, and I look forward to seeing you on a new webinar soon.